today we are privileged and honored. We're privileged and honored that uh, while you're having lunch, we have the rare privilege of Mbak Yuyun, or now I have to call her Her Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum. She's the Indonesia representative to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, or AICHR, for this period, the period of 2019 to the period 2021. She is a notable human rights defender in the region. In Indonesia, she is known as well as working for Forum Asia regional organization level in Bangkok. Currently, aside of working as a AICHR rep for Indonesia, she's also a PhD researcher at the International Institute of Social Studies at the Erasmus University Rotterdam in The Hague. Did I pronounce it correctly? In the Netherlands. So without further ado, I would call Mbak Yuyun to go to the stage, and I hope you can give her a warm round of applause. So please, while we set up her presentation here on the screen, I would encourage you, for those of you that haven't gotten your lunch, please take your lunch. Feel free, but please maintain your voice. And perhaps I can also ask Mbak Yuyun to, because sometimes she can be very blunt. I want to share to you that today's discussion is live streamed to our CSI social media, and perhaps because people are eating, maybe you can muddle the tone to be palatable. Right. Now, without further ado, Mbak Yuyun, time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Fitri, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't mind you keep eating, no problem. I'm very happy to be here, but apologize and not being able to be here earlier of the week. I was in AICHR activity in Cambodia on saying of the right of education. So I just written yesterday, and immediately I come here and prepare my presentation. So while I preparing this presentation, I realized that yesterday was the 10th year anniversary of AICHR. Dian has written a good op-ed asking the relevance of this AICHR to this region. Not able to address some of the voices of not be able to address some of the problems in ASEAN so far, despite the fact has been there for 10 years. But I would like to bring you to some of the journey. I hope it is going to be quite short in relation to AICHR before I go to the topic on ASEAN and the right to enjoy peace. So, okay, so AICHR has 14 mandates. AICHR was established for one of them is to promote and protect human rights, and it has 14 mandates that given by the master. The master means the member state of ASEAN, 10 of them, on 23rd of October 2009. So yesterday exactly we are 10 years old. So from the 14 mandates, I group into seven group of mandates. So AICHR has a role of coming up with a standard setting, coming up with the policy support for the ASEAN member state and ASEAN sectoral bodies. AICHR also has a role to protect human rights, to do capacity building, to have a dialogue, and to have human rights strategies. So these actually our role as a Human Rights Commission in AICHR. We have been criticized a lot to have more promotion than protection. So I think these measures show you that we have more promotion than protection. And the the representative are not necessarily independent from the beginning. So representative report to their appointing government. Unlike in Indonesia, we have the internal selection process. So far, only Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand that had organized internal domestic process to select the representative to be in this position. And but I always believe that there are a part of limitation. We also have a lot of opportunities and possibilities. I would say possibilities in relation to that. There is no mandate that prevent AICHR to listen to the victims, to the voices of the victims. So it means AICHR can do that. AICHR can listen to the victims. And then AICHR can also come up with a referral system. Despite the fact that AICHR cannot address the problem, AICHR should know who can address the problem. So this is what happened with me. I received a lot of cases in relation to the death of migrant workers, Indonesian migrant workers in Sabah, Malaysia. When they come to me, of course, I cannot say no. I receive the cases, but I also know that I cannot respond to the cases. So I brought these cases to Suhakam, the National Human Rights Institution in Malaysia, asking them to do fact-finding. They agreed. So the report of the fact-finding, of course, not for me because I'm Indonesian and Suhakam is Malaysia. The report will be given to the government of Malaysia, to the government of Sabah. Perhaps in the report, there will be the inclusion of recommendation to AICHR Indonesia or recommendation to government of Indonesia. So that is possible. That's what I call as referral system. Again, despite the fact that I have no mandate to receive complaints or to react to the complaints, I know which institution that can respond to the cases. So that's what has been doing so far. Indonesia, AICHR Indonesia will come up with this referral system. So I hope by the end of 2021, we will be able to establish a cooperation with different services in the region and to be able to refer some cases if we do not have a mandate yet by the end of 2021. And we can also come up with the focal point of certain issues inside AICHR to push the agenda forward. And yeah, so I provide you with this illustration. So you can see the square in the middle. That's the framework of ASEAN on human rights usually, because in ASEAN, everything needs to be compromised, need to be negotiated between the international human rights law, the national interest, and the ASEAN way. I think this is not a unique for ASEAN. It is also happen in Africa and other regions. So you need to make the international law relevant to the region. To make it relevant, region use different tools, different norms. And in ASEAN, the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration in particular is a product of the combination, negotiation, adaptation, rejection on certain international human rights law, and becoming the ASEAN framework on human rights. So ASEAN Human Rights Declaration has been criticized by civil society of watering down the international law. But if you can see, this is actually the framework of human rights in ASEAN, not only on human rights, I think. Many international law has been localized into ASEAN, into something that more relatable to the region. So this is my favorite picture. This is coming from, I took this from the book Dr. Dolittle. So this is exactly ASEAN. This animal has very difficulties to move forward because these two heads need to talk to each other where it wants to go. Otherwise, they can break. Yeah. So imagine this animal with these two heads, very difficult to move forward, and ASEAN has 10 heads to move forward. So they have to keep talking among each other where to go on this from this one. Especially when the issue is very sensitive like human rights. They really need to talk together. Well, 3 heads already come to an agreement, the other 3 heads disagree. So again, this three head and another three head has to talk each other. So that's how difficulties in ASEAN to move forward in on human rights and also on other sensitive issues. But despite the fact all differences we have in the region, you may have discussed it in your conferences, in your conference, despite the fact of number of negotiation and compromises we had to do in number of issues, in 1 decade of AICHR, we managed to have 142 activities. Very little in 10 years, actually. And we managed to have 53 completed reports. Unfortunately, not all reports you can access to in AICHR websites. That's our homework, how to work and engage with public more and to open up our reports because some of them are quite good and can have potential to move forward into formulation of norms in AICHR. But there is certain level of sensitivity that we have to agree together on how to move from one research to how this research can be a public document. And in the last 10 years, we have used around $3 million US dollar, which actually quite small in terms of that AICHR is a regional organization and it's actually covering 10 countries. And in the last 10 years, I would like to report to you, I would like to use this opportunity to report to you that we had come up with a standard setting like ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. Criticized, yes, we criticize a lot on this ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, but it is there as a framework of cooperation on human rights. And in relation to capacity building, we touch upon a number of issues and engage with different groups like journalists, persons with disabilities, and also with the those who are working in law enforcement. In terms of cooperation, policy support, research, providing advices to ASEAN sectoral bodies, we have completed research on CSR and human rights, women in natural disaster, study on legal aid, and we are now having ongoing research almost finished on right to life, right to peace, access to justice, right to water and sanitation. And I'm going to talk about right to peace, which relevant to your conference later on. In terms of providing advisory services to ASEAN sectoral bodies, we have none yet. In 2011, there was a question from the ASEAN sectoral body working on migrant workers in relation to the mandatory tests for migrant workers. And then this question asked to ASEAN, to AICHR. In that time, AICHR has not yet ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, so we do not have a basis how to move forward. Now, if there is a question from the ASEAN sectoral body, we might be able to answer some of the question using the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. In terms of the framework, as AICHR has come up with the master plan on the enhancement of the role of persons with disabilities. So this master plan has three communities: economic community, social, cultural, and political security. Basically to tell them that you have responsibility, you have a state obligation to fulfill, to respect, to promote, to respect, to protect, and fulfill the right of persons with disabilities. In terms of established dialogue, we have established dialogue with number of groups. Still a lot of homework because people are not satisfied with the way we engage them, but there are a number of dialogues so far with universities, civil society, with the UN bodies, with number of stakeholders. And we hope to expand our engagement further with different groups in the future. In terms of engaging with international law, there has been a number of discussions. So ASEAN becoming a space in which a member state who had not talked about international human rights law before, they have to talk about it along with economic and political interests. So there are a number of opportunities that AICHR has organized in the past in relation to engaging the international human rights law. So these are the illustration of how AICHR has engaged with with human rights issues. People always assume that, oh, because human rights is sensitive in ASEAN, so perhaps as the AICHR only deal with economic, social, cultural rights. Apparently, this statistic show that assumption wrong, because the biggest circle here is about civil political rights. It's about right to nationality, it's about migration and human rights, trafficking, prevention of torture, of freedom of expression and opinion, freedom of religion and belief, right to life, and access to justice. In terms of economic, social, cultural rights, we talk about right to environment, water and sanitation, right to health, right to education. The conference that I just attended this week in Cambodia. We also talk about right to peace and right to development. In ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, ASEAN and AICHR has been very, very proud of having right to development and right to peace as a niche of this particular declaration. In our work, we also engage with children, women, youth, chief of justice, and persons with disabilities in the last 10 years. So this is only to give you an idea that we are evolving. AICHR is evolving, but slowly, slowly. So we have the TOR of the AICHR, we have the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. The combination of these two enable us to move forward with number of issues. So for instance, we just had the enabling master plan. This enabling master plan will move into implementation and monitoring report. So imagine in the last 10, 20 years, we are going to have a state of respect, the respect of the right of person with disability. So we will be able to collect that, and then we will be able to move forward with perhaps mechanism. So similarly with last month, we agreed to come up with transboundary environmental impact assessment. So if this framework will move forward, again, we are going to establish a norm and implementation report, and finally we will be able to come up with a mechanism. So this is how AICHR and ASEAN move, evolutionary, step by step, slowly, slowly. Bringing all 10 countries feeling comfortable to each other on certain issues like human rights. And AICHR Indonesia will be taking a lead to come up with recommendation on the implementation of ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. So these kind of recommendation will be able to inform member states, the ASEAN sectoral bodies, how to implement some of the development project without violating certain rights and freedoms. So the current AICHR will be very busy to come up with this kind of recommendation on the implementation. I think in Europe it has also similar a document. It called recommendation on the implementation of the convention on European Convention on Human Rights. In the UN, the language has been used is general comments, but general comments addressing to member states how to implement certain rights and freedom at the national level. This one is for regional project for the ASEAN sectoral bodies. And these are some of the institutional development that has been evolved in AICHR in the last 10 years. I'm not going to mention one by one, but if you want to have this kind of this PowerPoint presentation, you can ask Fitri. Fitri has the file. Now, what next? So I have only 5 minutes, but I would like to take this opportunity to show you what possible next agenda for the next decade. Protection, that's very clear. For Indonesia, it is protection. In 2009, Indonesia refused to sign the TOR because protection was not there. So this is the second decade that we want protection to be there. But we also know putting protection there, it's going to be difficult. It is therefore, we want to establish practice. There is something that we believe in ASEAN, that practice first, institutionalize later. So we practice, establishing a foundation in which everyone feeling comfortable having this kind of practice, and it become institutionalized as a norm. So this is the framework that protection should cover action or responses action, remedial action, and environmental building. This is not me, the one to develop this. This is from the interagency meeting, the book, UN document. So I think this kind of framework fit with the vision that Indonesia is going to go. And so from now in the next 10 years, this is something that we are going to do. All possible activities that we are going to organize, going to implement should contribute to the protection. We are going to have a review of the TOR. That activity of the review of the TOR should contribute to the protection. We are going to have this activity in relation to trafficking in person between Malaysia and Indonesia. These activities should contribute to the idea of protection of the victims. In terms of a referral system, it also should contribute to the protection. So all activities, all intervention, all approaches we are going to do in the next 10 years should contribute to the practice, establishing a practice of protection. Now, this is the main topic of our project, our conference today. So I can say that ASEAN is for peace. ASEAN was established for peace as one of them. So peace is the DNA of ASEAN. No one can deny that. And ASEAN come up with number of frameworks in relation to peace, and number of actors also grow to address some of the issues in relation to peace, from civil society, from universities, and we have the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. Now, what is the contribution of my organization, the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, to the idea of peace? Because again, we have right to peace in our declaration, and ASEAN is actually was born for peace in the region. So we have Article 38 in relation to right to enjoy peace. So it is not right to peace, but right to enjoy peace. Right to enjoy peace. I think I have the explanation here. Oh, wait. We also have this study on right to enjoy peace coming from different countries. So we would like to have a rather bottom-up approach in relation to formulating a definition, norms, or standard in relation to right to enjoy peace. So this is something like ASEAN has been practiced so far, coming from practices at the national level and then come up as regional norms. So the study had a tentative definition which quite broad, and I'm not going to read this, but perhaps one thing that I would like to present here is right to enjoy peace, as mentioned by Article 38, is rather create an obligation of the state to ensure and foster the environment that promotes enjoyment of peace. In Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the word right to enjoy mentioned several times, such as right to enjoy asylum seekers, asylum, right to enjoy arts. So it doesn't create an obligation for state to provide asylum, but rather people can request and enjoy the asylum when it is granted. Similar understanding with right to enjoy peace. So people do not claim right to peace, but rather request the state to ensure that the environment will contribute to the peace, as in framework of ASEAN. And yeah, so as of now, after the study, AICHR is going to perhaps come up with some of the norms. It need to be discussed further among us. But we just completed the report. Indonesia submitted the last country report. So this is a 2 years project. So we hope to be able to come up with recommendation and agree with the recommendation and move forward with that issue. despite the fact Indonesia believe that right to enjoy peace is very important, but we are very careful about how right to enjoy peace will be defined. So that is why we continue to engage with AICHR on how definition can be elaborated and how right to enjoy peace does not or will not be used by other member states to limit the freedom. And AICHR also support the human rights education and peace education. We just supported the launch of the book or remapping of human rights education and human rights and peace education done by Mahidol University. So we are very happy to we are very happy to support that, and also because it is linked with our priority of capacity building in the region. So with that, I would like to close, and perhaps if you have further questions, I would be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Your Excellency. Um, it is quite interesting to know that in ASEAN region, oh, thank you. In ASEAN region, the right to peace is defined as the right to enjoy peace, and that enjoyment is actually need to be further formulated within the definition of the 10 member states that consist of that makes ASEAN, and I want to know more actually about what does it mean then as the peace. How is ASEAN defined peace, or because of the implementation or the formulation of the right to peace depends heavily on member state perception, whether the implementation of the right to peace in one country would depend heavily on their perception towards that definition of peace, and how is that possible, especially in this era where people migrate and then business are transnational, transboundaries, also with haze, yeah, but how do you see that, and as well as AICHR, Commissioner of AICHR, how do you see as your work or role in actually making the right to peace happen? Maybe that's my my question for now, and maybe after you give like maybe 2 minutes of comments, and I will open the floor for question and answer.
Okay, so I think ASEAN has a lot of frameworks already in relation to peace, without defining exactly what peace mean in academic discussion. It's rather more practical proposals. So ASEAN perceived that peace should be there for economic growth and development to run. So it is rather a condition to be established first without we move forward with other activities in relation to economic. So that's the reason, because when ASEAN was established in 1967, some countries are in good term to each other, and they said, so they come together to say that if we want to live together, then we need to stop war among us, because more rather intra-state conflict in that time. But for AICHR, as the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration mentioned, that without peace, other rights cannot be fulfilled or enjoyed. So right to enjoy peace here is rather empowering rights, at the same time a means to achieve human rights. So it is not independently established, it is a condition to other rights to be fulfilled or enjoyed. And I think the Article 38 also mentioned about the denial of human rights of individual and group will destabilize peace. So within this article, we also see that peace is not only means but also the purpose of the implementation of human rights. Even right to education in Article 31 mention about all education that will be organized and as and conducted by governments should contribute to the maintaining of peace. So again, peace is really the DNA of ASEAN. Even our ASEAN Human Rights Declaration lead to the implementation of ASEAN Human Rights Declaration itself should contribute to the maintaining of the peace. And the way AICHR, as it is mentioned in the Human Rights Declaration, look at the way to maintain peace through friendship and cooperation relations. This is something that we need to elaborate further. What does it mean by friendship cooperation and cooperation relations? How this approach will contribute to the peace, and we have not been able to reach that point. We are still in the very early stage of coming up with a baseline study, how each country member of ASEAN understand peace and how they come up with a project on peace. So for instance, the report has mentioned about Pancasila ideology in Indonesia is something that contribute to the idea of peace. Economic, so let me check the approach of Singapore as mentioned in the report. Nice one. Economic approach to peace is indispensable byproduct of an inclusive wealth generating social system. So this is very difficult to understand, but the approach of peace in Singapore, as mentioned in the report, based on 4 pillars: access to multiracial equality of space and dignity. Second, the dignity and living in a physical home, security of economic upliftment in the tandem with natural economic growth, and meritocracy. So each researcher tried to formulate a definition of peace based on their constitution and project program by the government. The Cambodia approach more win-win approach because they come from a civil war. How integration of formal opponent can be facilitated to contribute to the peace. So all of us in ASEAN have different experiences, definition, and ideas about peace. That would be a challenge by itself, how to come up with the regional norm of peace. Or perhaps there is no need to have a regional definition of peace. Because that's how we usually do. We understand certain term, but we try not to define the term to avoid misunderstanding. So the report, I hope it is going to be published by next year, has quite rich experiences and countries specific context in relation to peace without defining what peace means to the country.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I will open Q&A session from the floor. I will have a first 3 questions. We'll have 18 minutes until the participant needs to go. First, the lady in the middle, Fitri, and then any other raise of hand. Okay, we start with you.
Okay.
Can you state your name and affiliation, please?
All right. My name is Fitri, and I am actually independent researcher, and probably later will be going to continue my PhD. Okay, it's quite interesting, Honorable Ibu Yuyun Wahyuningrum, about your presentation. Well, actually, what you have said, like how to come up with the regional of peace in Asia. Well, especially, let's see in Indonesia, we have a lot of problem. For example, in Borneo, there is a problem also between the Dayaks and also Maduris, and also Dayaks and Melayu, and also a problem with Dayak and Bugis, which is happening in Penajam, the capital of Indonesia, in the last week. And there is also the problem in Papua, which has not been published yet. in Wamena or in the hinterlands of Papua. And my question is like, when you talk about the protections, like getting the protections in ASEAN, especially for Indonesia, and how could the protection will be happens if the small problems in those hinterlands in some of the part of Indonesia have not been published, or the media just cover the issues of the conflict which is happens in all over Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Fitri. Is there any other question from the participant? Yes, I saw on left.
Comment and reflection.
Can you say your name and affiliate?
My name is Christopher, University of Athens, Greece, with interest in research interest on Cambodia. It's more like a comment slash reflection on the 3 last days that I really enjoyed the discussions, that many parallel developments happen in the region, in that part of the world, and sometimes in terms of peace, the objective is to secure progress. Some other times it's to slow regression. AICHR, and happy anniversary to AICHR, I think it's one of the instruments that can help to, respond adequately to tendencies of progress or regression. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Maybe one last okay. Maybe I would allow Your Excellency to respond.
Thank you very much for the questions. So the reason why Indonesia's report came a little bit late, because actually we did not know what does it mean by right to peace or right to enjoy peace. So we searched a lot of argument, thesis, research on this, but putting it into our context is rather difficult. During our meeting, which also Fitri here attended, in that meeting we agree that Indonesia had a lot of experiences, both good and bad, to contribute to the idea of peace from our experience, from our issues. So we did not deny that we have a lot of problems in Indonesia in terms of maintaining peace, because context also change all the time. Your question is about protection. So at the moment, despite the fact that AICHR has no protection mandate or lack of protection mandates, the main reason why regional or international human rights institutions were established is actually to complement the national system, not to substitute. So it means the one that we need to strengthen is the national system, not the regional, not international. We wanted to have regional and international systems strong, but it should not substitute, so not to replace the system inside. Why? Because people got closer to the national system, to the provincial system. So it is in our work, we organize a lot of dialogue, capacity building, not only to build our own capacity, but also to build the capacity of the countries. So for instance, one way to do a protection is by accepting the international law, such as ratifying the convention. So there was a story that I like to share everywhere, that in 2013, Indonesia organized a workshop in relation to prevention of torture. The issue of torture was very, very sensitive in that time and now, until now. But we organized it anyway as a national initiative, invited all countries. In that time, Vietnam was about to ratify the convention. It has been there in the parliament for years. And then attending the meeting and listening to the experience of Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and other countries that have ratified the convention by implementing and establishing and implementing the national prevention mechanism, they felt confident that we are going to ratify this convention. A year after workshop, they ratified the convention. Of course, it is not because of the workshop, but the workshop contribute to the feeling of confidence. So that kind of activities that AICHR can do with two-pronged, building the capacity of the AICHR itself to gradually establish a protection mechanism for people in the region, but also to bring all state together to learn to each other on how to provide better protection. So that's kind of thing that we can do. For this year and next year, myself, AICHR Indonesia has discussed with the Ministry of Law and Human Rights. We are very excited to come up with the Yan Kommas, Pelayanan Komunikasi Masyarakat, the services for people, for community. So this kind of services is actually a complaint mechanism, a grievance mechanism for those who are living in provinces, even in district. So they can go to this service and log their complaints. But the responses will be limited to non-judicial response. For other judicial response, they can go to Komnas HAM, they can go to many other institutions. So for the issues in relation to Dayak Melayu, Penajam, Papua, at the moment, I know that Komnas HAM had organized or conducted a fact-finding mission, and some people also already the Council of People of Papua also had a lot of lobby to different institutions in Jakarta. So there has been a number of efforts to reduce some of the violence. Of course, it is not yet come to fruition, but we all pay attention to that, including myself. I also receive a lot of reports and complaints from Papuan. I received some of them. I sometimes brought to the discussion to certain groups, because again, this is not considered as international issue. This is not considered as cross-border issue, so I will not be able to intervene. What AICHR has been taken as an issue is the issue in like migrant workers, the violence of migrant workers, because it's cross-border, trafficking in person, refugees. So we had discussed about Rohingya a lot in our meeting. As you can see also, the leaders and foreign ministers had come up with some possible solution, which had been identified as repatriation. It didn't work yet, but some discussion happening. But I just would like to, in terms of publishing media, I think I'm not sure whether I will be able to answer that. But I also concerned about the shutdown of the internet. Whenever something happened, then internet was shut down, so we do not have proper information. We don't have access to those who are living in the area in which internet was shut down. So I'm very concerned about that, and I have expressed this concern to the related ministry. Christopher, I thank you very much. Yes, this is something that we need to reconsider. We need to consider how AICHR can help to reduce the regressive of this. We haven't thought about this, but thank you very much for pointing it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. If no other question, if you have a burning question, by all means. But because of
8 minutes more.
it's 8. Okay, I have to be accountable. Thank you. Is there any other burning questions on how the right to peace should be implemented, or how can we actually voice our concern, like how, as a people of ASEAN, because I am also, you are our commissioner, you're representing in Indonesia. So is AICHR has a complaint mechanism that the people of ASEAN can talk to, and perhaps if it's not there yet, how can we actually push it to happen? Like, what's the progress there? Can you explain further? Thank you.
Thank you, Fitri. That's a very good question. How to implement right to peace? That's something also our question. Having a right to peace or right to enjoy peace in our ASEAN Human Rights Declaration does not mean that we know how to implement that. I think that's not only question in ASEAN but also around the world because lack of understanding and definition about right to peace or right to enjoy peace. In relation to complaint mechanism, at the moment, we are in the process of reviewing of our TOR. This review is supposed to be happen in 2014, 5 years after the TOR come into force. But in 2014, there was a reluctance to move forward with the review because it's only 5 years. So the ministers want to see how AICHR can implement all the mandates in the TOR. So this year, the foreign ministers had agreed to review by asking senior official meeting or SOM to establish a panel of experts. So this panel of experts will consist likely of 10 representatives from 10 countries. So in November meeting, summit will be in November in Bangkok. Each country should suggest the name of the representative to sit as the panel of experts and come up with suggestion in relation to ways of working of the panel of experts. So AICHR Indonesia has organized together with civil society on this particular issue on the 4th to 5th September, I think. And Ministry of Foreign Affairs also organized a consultation on the 14th of October together with civil society. So this is something that Indonesia has been practicing so far. We always consult with civil society to listen to their concern and to hear the voices of the citizen of Indonesia. We take their voices very seriously in our submission, in our position and talking points in ASEAN. So that's what we have now. We also recognize that number of reluctant, the number of skepticism about how to move forward with a review because the way the Article 14 in ASEAN Charter to establish a human rights body was very, very bloody difficult. And to develop the TOR was also another difficult time. So that is why when they wanted to, if they want to open up this TOR, it means all the trauma come back. So they don't want to open up. So perhaps that psychological situation in 2014. Now, since there was an interest and commitment to open this box, so we try to offer a number of possibilities. So, for instance, we review and change some of the paragraph there selectively. Not all, because not everything in the TOR are bad. Some of them are very useful. So, for instance, paragraph 4.2 is actually to develop the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. The ASEAN Human Rights Declaration is already there, so perhaps the word develop can be changed into monitor the implementation, because AICHR does not implement the declaration. ASEAN member states, the one to implement. The role of AICHR as a regional human rights body is to monitor the implementation of the TOR. So that can be done. There are a number of concerns that the lack of protection. So this is the time to insert protection. So civil society has suggested that AICHR, the TOR should include a power of AICHR to investigate, to monitor, to do fact-finding. Actually, I'm not sure whether it is going to pass through. Maybe ASEAN will find different term that can reflect this thing. We have also studied how the African Commission, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights included the mandate of promotion, mandate of fact-finding. It is not in the mandate, it is in the procedures. So again, location of the term is also important. The Charter of African and Human and People's Rights mention about this commission has a mandate on protecting human rights. That's it. There is no elaboration what protection means. So that can be done. And also because the purpose, in the purpose section of the TOR mention about the purpose of the establishment of ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights is to promote and protect human rights. That should be enough actually to elaborate further how protection can be done. But the TOR also mentioned about money from external funds only can be used to promote human rights, not to protect. So that particular paragraph need to be revised. For the external funds can be used for both promotion and protection of human rights. So that's our stage now, but I'm very hopeful because the discussion is going on compared with the situation in 2014. I hope some of the words or enabling words can be included in the TOR so that we can have a possible interpretation that rather liberating for the TOR. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuyun. Good luck for the review of the TOR. I hope it will be more of, positive going forward rather than a decline of implementation protection. Yeah, because we know at least in this region, we kind of observe the withdrawal of democracy, they say. But thank you very much for your time, and can we give applause that Yuyun deserves? Thank you. Maybe for journalists that are attending, His Excellency is welcoming for a question, maybe in the far corner if you would have a doorstop interview. Okay. For a subsequent event, we come to the end of our conference, Varieties of Peace. I would like now to invite a representative from the Umea University, Dr. Olivia Elizabeth Olivier, sorry, to give her closing remarks.
All right, so we have come to the end of this conference, and it's my privilege to say a few words in closing. On behalf of the Varieties of Peace research program, I'd like to thank all of you for being part of this conference and contributing to it. Together, we have explored varieties of peace and how they are manifested, experienced, and understood across Asia and beyond. We have explored peace as diverse post-war situations, webs of relationships, and discourses and ideas. On behalf of the Varieties of Peace program, I especially also want to thank CSIS and FITRI in particular. Without you as our partners, this conference wouldn't have been nearly as successful and amazing as I think it has been. After leaving from here, we hope that you all would like to stay in touch with the Varieties of Peace research program. Tell us what you're doing, keep track of what we're doing, and hopefully find other opportunities for collaboration and interaction in the future. On our webpage, you can find references to our publications, news, social media feeds, and also some of our working papers. Among them, the Relational Peace Framework that has been discussed several times during the conference is published there. In the coming months, another working paper where we outline our idea of 3 approaches to peace, the situational, relational, and ideational, will be available there as well. As one way of building on the work that we've been doing in preparation for this conference and the discussions that we had here, we are currently exploring possibilities for some follow-up publications. where revised versions of selected conference contributions would be included. So in the coming month or so, you can expect us to be in touch with some of you regarding those plans that are currently taking shape. But in closing, we hope that all of you are leaving here with new inspiration to continue to engage with the concept and the empirical realities of peace in your research, and that together we'll keep pushing this field of research forward. So thank you again for your contribution to this conference, and safe travels home. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I will call the head of International Relations Department of CSIS to give closing remarks. Dr. Shafia Muhibat, time is yours.
Thank you, Fitri. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm standing here on behalf of my Executive Director, Dr. Philips Fromento, who conveys his apologies as he has to travel to South Korea yesterday, so he can't be with you for the full 3 days. But yeah, we've come to the end of our 3 days conference, so I'd like to begin by actually congratulating everyone for such a very interesting and very successful 3 days of discussion, during which we have also had very thoughtful insights from, several very notable figures who have experienced firsthand being involved in peace processes. So, and also as for us in CSIS, it has been an honor to be able to, organize this event, a very thoughtful learning experience for everyone here, not just Fitri, but everyone in the International Relations Department of CSIS. So thank you again for inviting us and making us part of this conference. I'd like to thank, of course, the Umeå University of Sweden and then the Swedish Foundation of Humanities and Social Sciences for their collaboration. And we look forward to future collaborations, of course, not only on within these issues, but only on a variety of other issues of interest for all of us. Lastly, I'd like to thank specifically Fitri for a very successful event. She basically single-handedly organized this whole thing from our side. So thank you, Fitri. She has had some help also from other colleagues in the department, and we have also very enthusiastic interns who are very interested on these issues as well. So thank you again for being here in Jakarta, and safe travels for everyone, going back to your respective countries this afternoon or tomorrow, and hopefully we can see each other again very soon in other events. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shafia Muhibat. We come to the end of our event, and thank you for being here, and CSIS hope to welcome you back. And for those that will return to your hotel, housekeeping announcement, the bus will leave at 2 p.m. Thank you.